Watch. Hey, everybody, welcome to Second Watch. I have been told that not once on this show have either of us said, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell. So tonight, would you please hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and ring that motherfucking bell? All right, Matt.
What?
Happy Friday, man.
What's up,
How's
man?
your
How you
week
doing?
going? I'm doing all right.
It's been really busy, but good. Didn't get much gaming in. I was ill Monday, so sadly I missed Eric's hostile game, but it was the game to miss because apparently there was almost a TPK. So I'm still alive by default. But then of course the row got canceled. But yeah, other than that, things are good. How about you?
Everything's great. You know, it was a bummer that and we might talk about this one day when we talk about, you know, different kind of like stories or linear games and sandbox games. But last night was one of those times where my phone's blowing up, where we kind of got screwed, not because everybody was doing spring break stuff, but we couldn't just keep playing. You know, if we would have played our game, those guys would have missed out on what happens. And it just kind of one of those things that I was thinking about. You know, is that if we were playing an old school style game, it is me, bro. I went a little, I, I went a little crazy with the razor today. Sorry. Anyway, so yeah, it was just one of those things we didn't get to play this week, but I'm glad everybody was out having a good time. I think one of the guys was at GaryCon, so I'm
Yeah,
sure.
at
Yeah, I'm
most.
sure
Yeah,
he
he's a
was.
regular on the Second Watch chat. So I hope he's having fun at GaryCon. I've seen some pictures from Venger and whatnot. So, um, speaking of not doing a good enough job shilling this show, I don't shill my stuff enough. I just want to point out real quick. A gift for all in Norway, Lamentations, little dungeon crawls, 15 away from silver on drive through. It's $4.99. Anybody interested? That'd be great. And we'll be talking to Miguel in just a few minutes here, but I just sent him about a week ago the manuscript for the update to Wretched Folklore. Honestly, I should have done that 6 months ago, but I'm lazy. But there's going to be expanded rules for shamans in there, steampunk inventions, and some additional rules for kung fu, because you need to have a kung fu dude out in the Midwest or the Wild West. Also, in April, we are planning on having DM Blackwall here to talk about Horde Wars. We had a really crazy conversation with him last night. Really cool, interesting dude. In fact, we might he doesn't know this yet, but we might ask him to run a game, and we'll probably live stream it so we can see Horde Wars and play it, and then we'll talk to him about it. Surprise, Blackwall, if you're watching. We don't know what we're going to do.
We've just volunteered you for not one show, but two. That's what you get for talking to us off air, man. Yeah. That's what you get. Now, you know what? That was a really good talk. I'm glad he popped in. He is an interesting guy. That game, I just downloaded it recently and I haven't really had a chance to read it. But, like I was telling him last night, that game has a lot of buzz. It's coming out of people's mouths, and it's all positive. So congratulations, Congratulations. Yeah. I can't wait to read it and play it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my book to come in, and then two things. One more, I'm a moron, and I forgot to make the Discord link like permanent. It's now permanent. It's in the description. Please, you're more than welcome to join the Discord. We got games running all the time. It's becoming more active. If you're interested in being a game master and can commit, you can be one. I'll give you your own section on the server, and you can run whatever you want. It can even be a story game. I don't care. I just want people gaming together. And on that note, I tried to do this a week ago, and it's my own fault for not organizing it well. But Travis Fauber sent me a PDF of something he's been working on called Full Metal Tilt. It's jousting rules for OSE and OSR games. I'd like to organize a jousting tournament on the server. So be on the lookout that if you're on the server, I might put together like some kind of prize beyond bragging rights if you win the first 3. I have a bunch of like random game material I could just maybe give you or something. You know, I'll figure it out. Maybe put a little grab bag and whoever wins gets first pick or something.
Do I count? Can I get a grab bag? Or how does this shit work?
You can play. You can play. I'll be the judge though.
All right.
Without further ado, he's been waiting, and it's 3 a.m. where he is. Everyone, please welcome Miguel Ribeiro of the Red Room. We are very happy to have him here.
Hello,
Miguel. How you doing,
Miguel,
man?
hey.
I'm awake, which is not usual at this hour.
You know, when me and Matt first started talking about doing this stream, we were, listing names of people to get. I told Matt, I was like, oh, we've got to get Miguel from Red Room. I had just started reading Wretched about the time we were talking about this. And he was like, I don't know, man. The time difference. He says, I don't know if we can keep him awake.
We have to be
So
awake
thank
a
you
more.
for making the effort and being here. We really do appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah.
And thanks for inviting me.
So, go ahead, Gary.
No. Go ahead, Matt, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, well, I think this is actually good timing to have you on because you're working on another product, Savage Swords, and I think it's a good time to talk about it because when a little story, when I discovered you guys, it was right at the beginning with Wretched Bastards, the first edition.
Yep.
And I just want to point out customer service. Like as soon as he said, "Oh, it's up on Lulu," I went to Lulu, ordered it, and then I get this direct message from Miguel saying, "Hey, I think there was a problem with the cover.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you another one." So I actually have 2, one with like a blue background and another a black background. I don't even know what's supposed to be the right color, but I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, there was an issue. I can't remember what it was, but I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. And I was an instant fan because of just the customer service. Right. But then you guys started pumping out all kinds of like setting material.
At that time, it was 1 a week almost.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
And that's really when I became a fan because I'm a settings guy more than I am like a rules guy. I like kit bashing things. I like coming up with weird ideas and I think if anything, even if you're not like into the Wretched RPG or your alternative system, Red, I mean, there's just source material at the Red Room.
Most of the Wretched books are just setting books. In the first edition there were games, but the second edition ones are just setting books with a few rules, alternatives, options. But yeah, mostly setting books. That I like settings as well. I don't really care about rules. That's why I chose the OSR. The rules are made. I just have to adapt them and do settings.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say, Savage. Oh, yes. Hey, Griff. Thanks for being here, man. Savage Swords seems to be coming around full circle, though, right? I mean, is Savage Swords kind of back into
basically it's what I would like to have done when we did Wretched Bastards. I'm not really into fantasy, as you know, high fantasy especially, but I like Conan. So my first concept was a bit like I was going to do something sword and sorcery, but then, well, it's not quite what most people like, so we decided to go with a little bit of high fantasy, but not too high. Just
I'm in the same boat with you, Miguel. I'm not, and I say this, fantasy is not my favorite genre. Like, it's not, my favorite genre of movie. I mean, I like all the good stuff, I think. Um, but that was the first thing when I started reading Wretched. It was like it was so good and tailored to games that are definitely not, just hack and slash, dungeon crawls. Um, and it made me want to start building a game like right then, and I started, I had made a little primer for it and everything and just never really got it off the ground. That's my fault. But it was really inspiring to me. And I'm curious when we talk about Wretched, um, sins and virtues, where'd that, is that in this game as well? How did that happen? Where did that idea came from? Because that's a good idea.
This one is not Wretched, of course. It's
Oh,
our
sorry.
our new set of rules. It's called Red
It's called
because
Red.
Red Room. So
Okay.
it's a new one. There's no there's no sins and virtues, but there's something similar. There's a path of virtue and sin, and a path of honor and infamy. It's a little bit different because instead of having one sin or one virtue or both, you just have a what I would call it a scale where the
Mm-hmm.
character, depending on his actions, you go towards the light or the dark side. So it's a little bit different, but
Yeah.
it's almost a similar concept. About sins and virtues, I think the idea came from Gabor Lux's game, which is called Helvexia, I think. In that case, it's there are only virtues, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not sure about that, but that was the first thing on my mind when I decided to introduce that concept.
Gotcha.
First, there were
Thank you.
only sins because it was wretched. So, but then I decided, well, not everybody wants to play a rogue or a scoundrel, so we better add the virtues as well
Well,
on second.
I just love it. I just really love that. And I'm sorry. I thought that it was part of the Wretched thing. I
No,
apologize.
it's
This
not.
is
But
a
there are
new
some.
system.
What's common between this and Wretched Bastards is in second edition we introduced a larger setting to Wretched Bastards, basically the world in which the game takes place, and that is very Conan-esque. So there are different kingdoms that are based on real world
Mhm.
empires or kingdoms, and I've expanded on that, but used mostly the same thing, mostly the same places, because they fit in here. They fit in this one better than they fit in Wretched Bastards actually. So there are some similarities, and that's why I'm going to issue a code for people who bought second edition Bastards. They will have a 50% discount
Oh, that's nice.
because that's I think it's there's some repetition, not that much, but there's some repetition. The setting bit, it's not exactly the same. As I said, it's expanded in here, but it's similar. So
So, the difference between Wretched and Red. I mean, we'll get into details of both, but just broad strokes. How would you describe
but
Wretched?
it's the
What's
levels. There are no levels in this one. I was never a big fan of that. There are a few things in OSR games that I really don't like, and levels is one of them. I think it's a bit strange. A concept that it's too gamified, I guess. I prefer the other options of dealing with that, like using experience points to improve skills or attributes or whatever. So I've taken the levels from this. Um, there are also some other minor things, like there are less skills. People complain there are too many skills in Wretched. I agree, it's true. There are too many skills. So This one has less skills as well. I've changed also the names of the attributes because in Wretched they were Wretchified. These ones are more similar to OSR, typical OSR, not exactly the same. Dexterity. I've kept dexterity instead of agility and toughness instead of constitution, but the other ones are strength, not muscle as in Wretched, and intelligence, not brains as in Wretched. And I think that's mostly that, I guess. I've
Yeah,
simplified combat as well.
yeah. I when I first started getting into Wretched RPG long before Red, because Red you developed this past year, right?
Mhm, yeah, yeah.
I always described Wretched as sort of a skills game masquerading as a OSR game,
Yeah, that's it.
which I thought was actually kind of neat because one of the things I was sort of discovering when I first got into the OSR, and I got into it late, like 10 years had gone by, and all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, Lamentations of the Flame Princess. This is different. One of the things I noticed immediately was 5e players and modern gamers are looking at their fighter from OSC or fighter from Lamentations and going, what can I do with this? Right. And kind of getting them to think outside the box, outside the game, and just sort of being in this immersive world. I found your system to almost be kind of like a bridge because you have these skills that can kind of, you know, put you in the kind of direction where you're like, oh, okay, I can do this, and I'll think in those kinds of terms, when deciding what my character can do. But also, I noticed, and I want to get your thoughts on this. You use terms like archetypes, and you have life paths, which are not something you typically see in an OSR game. What was the motivation there?
Well, if you want to know where did I pick that from, probably Traveler, I guess. Cyberpunk 2020. I think that is useful for developing a character without taking too much to write a 3-page backstory, right? And you just
Right.
and so that's the concept of that. It's old, but it's not OSR, right? It's a little bit different. We can call it old school, but not that old.
Yeah. Did you when you were creating either Wretched or Red, did you think of it as an old school game?
That's a good question.
Well, and I just ask because I know that the mechanics,
Well,
the
rules wise,
rules, yeah,
rules wise it is, but
but I
I
don't,
can say that I'm not old school in that I'm old, but I'm not old school.
right,
So when I started playing, I played D&D.
right,
It was the first thing we played, but it wasn't one of the old school editions. I started. Well, I mean, the one I started with was, but because there was a translation to Portuguese of the basic set, but they never translated the other ones, so it was just the basic set. After that, I purchased a D&D second edition in English, and that's the D&D we played. Uh, but not for long. I wasn't. I was never a big fantasy fan. So after a while, we decided that that's not. This is not for us. We have to change for something else. And so we started playing Call of Cthulhu and other stuff. And so we didn't play D&D for a long time, just 3 years maybe, and never dungeons. I hate dungeons. I'm sorry, but I can't stand that.
I'm kind of in that place where I'm trying to. I feel like dungeons need a reason, and most dungeons are just holes in the ground with a
Yeah,
bunch of
yeah,
monsters somehow
yeah.
coexisting
I really
peacefully together.
no. I can't do that. I can't do that. Even when it started, of course, the first thing we played was a dungeon because that's the easiest thing to do, and probably I don't know if there was a dungeon as well in the book already, but we've played mostly intrigue and politics and all that, even with low level characters. But low level intrigue, low level and investigation games, because we always end up doing some kind of horror themes in all games. And so even in D&D, we did that, and obviously Wretched was meant for that kind of stuff, darker themes.
Right. What would you say red is like? Wretched is just like, hey, here's your game. Like this is exactly what it is. Is red? I mean, what would you consider red as like? If wretched is your hot rod with what is
It's a bit a little bit streamlined. It's basically there's no concept to Red. It's a toolbox. Wretched is supposed to be the game where you play scoundrels and that kind
right?
of. But Red is just a simplified version, and four different styles of games. So there's no concept. It's a toolbox.
Got you. That's great though.
Yeah,
That's
we do
great.
have bundles. Not all of them, but we have bundles. There was a question about bundles.
I'm looking if there it is. Oh, maybe that wasn't the right one. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I was too busy listening to what he was saying.
We have a space and a country and epoch and a horror bundle as well. I think it's four bundles. Not sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, you just listed off like all these like genres that you've been dabbling in and been writing for. Uh, and before I guess we could go into like the details of those, but I'm a big fan of knowing what people's like influences are and their appendix
Mhm.
N. I call it their personal appendix N. And I know the answer to this question because I have a lot of your books, and you
Yeah.
do something that I really like.
I mentioned them all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, James Raggi does something similar too. He has like this almost personal essay in the beginning of something that he's written, so you kind of like get this. It's almost like the writer is talking to you, right? And so I feel like I get to know you a little bit with what you're saying in the books, and so like what at the end of the day, like you hear guys on Twitter on X talking about the appendix N of AD&D 1E and how Poul Anderson is fantastic and Edgar Rice Burroughs is great. I'm not saying they're not, but obviously not everyone gets into fantasy and sci-fi and contemporary fiction and whatnot through those old pulp authors, and some people get into it through movies and whatnot. So what is like your appendix N? Like what gets you going to play role-playing games and get into that sort of headspace?
For me, it's mostly movies. Um, of course, it depends on the genre, but I would say that for Wretched, the appendix N is composed mostly by Italian movies of the 60s and the 70s. Giallo movies first, because that's where we started with the Giallo scenarios. Uh, Also, those Conan ripoffs, like the Barbarians and all that stuff,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and Conquest, and there are several by Italian directors. Also, the action movies of the 70s as well, horror movies of the 70s and 60s, late 60s, 70s, uh, science fiction. There aren't that many. Well, there are post-apocalyptic as well. So that was I've spent about 2 years watching lots of those movies as inspiration for Wretched settings. Um, then, of course, there's Clive Barker, which is also a big influence on our horror stuff. Darker, mostly, but also Wretched Darkness. And a few other oddities. Obviously, David Lynch is also a big influence. That's why we're called the Red Room. Yes, it's not a reference to 50 Shades of Grey. It's a reference to Twin Peaks. Um, what else? Well, horror movies in general, not just those ones that I was talking about, not just the giallo horror movies in general from the 70s to the 90s. I guess it's that's the best time for horror movies. And Book wise, well, there's Clive Barker, of course. There's Howard, especially for Savage Swords. The Conan stories. That's one of the things that I like in fantasy. Though this is, well, sword and sorcery, but it's still fantasy. Lovecraft as well, I guess. We can use it as a reference. It's not my favorite horror writer. Oh, and Poe, of course, and other gothic
Yeah,
authors.
well, a lot of what you guys have, and I can't stress I'm familiar with the Red Room. You have everything from my personal favorite cyberpunk setting, which is Wretched New Flesh, and this is a city guide, the of Aladad city guide, fantastic. And then you have, and I never thought I'd like a kids on bike adventure game, but the End of Innocence, like, dude, this is like got some beautiful writing in it. I found myself nostalgic for when I was like, 6, 7, 8 years old in the 80s. Just fantastic. This Twilight of Empires, this is like 17th century Spain and Portuguese, right? Portugal
Hmm.
setting. But I mean, even if you're, and it's got like stuff for like doing alchemy and stuff, like fantastic. This is just a treasure trove of stuff. I'm a
Today
big
I
land.
saw on the Discord server, Matt posted a Kids on Bikes game, and I didn't realize that you guys were releasing one. And I swear I thought he got hit in the head. Like it was just,
Yeah,
what is Matt doing playing Kids on? And then I read, I was like, oh, Red Room. Okay. I
it
get
was unexpected
it.
for us as well. Sylvia wanted to do something like that for a while. The first time she mentions, I said, "No, forget about that. We're not going to do that profession." But then I was thinking, well, I quite like Ray Bradbury's books,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, maybe we can do something Bradbury inspired, not for Ratchet, but since we're doing not Ratchet stuff now, I thought this is the time we can use Red for this. So this is mostly inspired by Bradbury's. They aren't really connected, but it's those novels that take place in, oh, what's the name of the city? I can't remember. Well, it's the city inspired by his own hometown. So it's mostly inspired by Red Bradbury and also by a Spanish TV show of the 70s. So because there are two settings in this game. One is a nostalgic town. That one is inspired by Bradbury. And then there's a summer town. The summer town is inspired by that 70s TV show.
Yeah, yeah, you got San Cristobal Bay. That's like the summer.
Yes. Yeah,
That
that
one I really like. Oak Brook is like spooky autumn. Like
yeah.
it reminded me of a movie that I absolutely adored when I was younger. Well, actually, one of the first like more gothic horror movies I ever watched. It was called The Lady in White. It's about a kid who gets like stuck overnight in his school, like a closet or something, and he sees like this ghost child get murdered by some invisible force, and it basically turns this kid into an investigator because he wants to find out what happened to this poor little girl, right? And it's like wild. And this is exactly this game like is right up there with the Goonies, Lady in White,
Yeah.
Stand By Me. It's great. Like I never
That
thought,
movie I couldn't watch now, but I quite like the Stand By Me.
yeah.
The protagonist, no.
Yeah, sure,
I
right.
can't stand that guy.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, this is great. Like there's some like wonderful things like a weird meter for like because kids are like in tune with the supernatural and because of their imagination. Like it's really smart. There's some really smart decisions you made in here. And it's one of the reasons why I'm like, I gotta like see if I can put together a like a mini campaign or something this summer for it. Like, because I'm just like I said, I was like, shit. The writing is just great. It's a beautiful book. I think everyone should pick it up, even if you don't think Kids on Bikes is your thing.
I can say that it's
I think
not
it's
my thing.
worth
I've
looking
never
at.
played a kids on bikes game ever. So this is just I use the rules, but that's not something that I've ever played. Of course, I played this one,
Yeah,
but yeah, not before. That
Yeah.
was never something I was interested in.
Yeah, and I don't know if
Yes,
you know this, but in
Judd
chat,
wrote a
oh,
scenario for this.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the greatest game master that ever lived.
Yeah.
It's part of the Wretched crew, Judd. What was it called? Something Sparks or something like that. I can't remember the name. Sorry, Judd. But yeah, it was fun. I got it. I'm gonna use it. So you can find that at the Red Room.
And since you mentioned Twilight of Empires, that is a very uh, distinct thing. It's inspired by, I don't know if you know the books, but they are in English, so if you want to take a look at that. Captain Alatrist.
Mm-hmm.
There's a movie as well, but the movie is not. There's some problems in that movie. If you haven't read the books, you'll probably not quite understand the story. There's some problems in the editing of that movie. I think they should have made a director's cut so people would understand it. But it's from a famous Spanish writer, contemporary, but he usually writes about historical times. So this is the golden century of Spain. Not quite the golden century for Portugal. We were part of Spain during a bit of that, and the time period of this game includes that time when Portugal was conquered by Spain. Well, not conquered, but taken over by Spain. And so takes place after discoveries, and it's an interesting time. I think it's an interesting time to place adventures. Before that, we had done the Discoveries game, so I thought that this could be like a sequel to that one.
Okay. What I also noticed, like in Twilight of Empires, I mean, like the research and the historical information and lore, I mean, is really good. And
I didn't do the research actually. I did the research through the books, but I'm hoping that the author. I'm hoping no. I really know the author is really a history buff, so he has done his own research. So I done my research by reading his books and taking notes.
oh, sure, sure.
There's lots of things that I took from those books. Of course, there's also things I know from history class. But those books are really very well researched and very well written as well.
Yeah. Like I totally plan on, and I've said this to people again, like if you're not, if the Wretched RPG or Red is not your thing, these books are still good, like source material. Like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, for example, his default setting is the 17th century, and Twilight of Empires has got some great stuff just for that if you wanted to use it. And on that note, what I've noticed in both Red and in Wretched, you do a lot of things different with magic.
Mhm. Yeah,
Is that just you just don't like the way magic's done in classic OSR games?
exactly. Yeah, since the beginning, we never, except the first edition, there was probably that was mostly traditionally. Well, not exactly because they were already rituals, but um, but I quickly decided that we should skip on that. I like the concept of rituals versus spells. I think it's more realistic, I guess.
well, it fits the genre. You know, you
Yeah.
think of all those movies, especially in the 70s and 80s. You know, there's always, you know, one group doing the ritual and another group trying to stop it or protect it or what have you. It's never just somebody snaps their fingers and there's, you
Mhm.
know, they
Yeah.
have magic missile. And it does, and it's real. It's just good to have something different, you know, to the point where I kind of wish my D&D games had ritual magic. You know, there was more, there's more mood to it, you know, and I feel like there's bigger stakes. You know, it takes a little longer, the
Yeah,
effects are
it's longer.
a little broader. It's so much fun. And was that Was that basically because of the difference between modern gaming or playing a game in say a modern setting as compared to fantasy? Was it I mean, was it TV? I guess what I'm really trying to get at is what is the difference? Here we go. What's the prime difference between playing a fantasy game when you're in the dungeon or you're hex crawling and playing a game like Red or these different books that the different settings? What is the difference in those kind of games?
Uh, I think modern settings are more immersive. I think it's easier to relate to the characters, and they need to be a little more realistic. I'm not saying that magic exists, but if it did exist, I think it would be ritual magic, not magic missile. So that's why we decided to introduce ritual magic, because most of our settings are not fantasy. So
Yeah.
to make it available for the other settings, like the horror settings, uh, the modern horror, the 19th century horror, even Wretched Country, it would be shamanic magic, which is also
Mhm.
probably more ritualistic than just snap and something happens. So that's why we chose to have ritual magic. And because most of our games, even if they are in the past, the present, or the future, they have a horror theme to them, and ritual magic works with horror, even if it's not entirely. It's not. I'm not a pandit. I don't do. I'm not a magician, a real world magician.
Right.
So our rituals are not based in real life magic, or just real life magic, but in the movies or in fiction in
Right.
general.
Right. When you're when you're running a game or planning a game and it's in one of these modern settings, I mean, I know what's different as a game master. Like, what is it that you're obviously, if you're playing like OSE, I'm drawing dungeons right now, right? I've got my book of graph paper, rooms, 10 feet a square. When you're putting together and running a game that, it NPCs count, a lot. There's mysteries. It's not so. How do you do it? What's the difference? How do you plan differently for a different type of game? And how do you run it?
It might take a little while if you want to really prepare stuff, of course. When compared to um, when compared to a dungeon, I think it might take a little longer if you want to have a setting. But well, of course, in this case, when I'm using my own settings, so I know them, I don't really need to prepare much. But I think that's the way used to work, and I'm not going to talk right now because, as I said, now I'm using my own settings. So what I used to do was I would take a few days to prepare a setting with characters. Let's say, for example, Welcome to St. Cloud, which was a campaign I ran as a game master about 25 years ago. So I prepared a city or town. Not I didn't do a lot of detail, but I've did some pages about it. I've decided the important NPCs, what were their secrets. This is Twin Peaks inspired, so everybody had secrets. Um, and then that turns out to be our sandbox. This week, I'm going to use this. I have this information here, and then I'll throw the characters in here. And I don't have to prepare sessions then after that.
Yep.
If you take some time to do that, and I've done that several times. The other books that we published first, the Memorial, which takes place in an hospital, and Orphean Lofts, which is a murder mystery in a building. All of this I've started by a short description of the place, a short description of several NPCs that will be there, few plot hooks, potential stories that can develop, and then throw in the characters. like a weird soap opera, just like exactly
Mhm.
like Twin Peaks.
Yep.
So it's a different way of preparing stuff, of course.
Yeah.
But when you are game mastering, usually it's very if the group is right, of course. Uh, if the group is right, it's very easy to run it. People will
The
always come
group
up.
is very important. I think the group
Yeah.
is really important. And I struggle sometimes. You know, I like running games in modern settings or in sci-fi settings. Um, and I do find myself struggling sometimes to kind of get the players motivated. You know, and you always feel like, oh, I didn't lay a clue good enough, or or something like that. But the soap opera aspect, I totally relate to, because a lot of times when I'm designing NPCs for something, I'm trying to figure out the relationship between this NPC and that NPC, and I a lot of things I'll do are small town, like they're really kind of based on the small town I grew up with. So it's like, who are the two or three really rich families?
Mhm.
Who's the guy that makes meth at the the bus
Yeah.
station or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know if everybody can relate to that, to the
Yeah,
soap opera. I'm not, when I say soap opera, I'm not talking about General Hospital or something like that. I'm talking
right.
about. Well, it could be Dallas, I guess.
I, it,
There's intrigue and there's a role playing game for Dallas. So.
I actually, when I first read Wretched, I was gonna take a game I was playing in a different system and move it over to Wretched. And I wrote this whole thing and I posted it, even I think on your server and on Lord Mateus's. And instead of using AI to do pictures, I pulled like 70s movie stars and soap opera actresses. You know what I mean? And it just felt so much cooler. So but it was very soap opera like, in that it was all about, instead of having a location like a dungeon, you had rumors, people wanted different things, and you kind of had to get to those NPCs and work through them. And so it is a different kind of game to run
Yes.
than your traditional
I
OSR
think
game.
I think a lot of that comes too from the your influences. A lot of movies. I know when the OGL debacle happened, you and I sat down and talked a lot about Wretched, and I said, this is a very cinematic game. Let's just lean into it, right? And I think that's. I mean, I find like I'm not ready for anything like this, but I'd love to run a cyberpunk game, and I will be using
Don't say that,
Wretched
Matt. They'll
Wretched New.
hold you to it.
I know. Well, I want them to. I will be using Wretched New Flesh, or Wretched New Flesh. And the first thing I started thinking about, like almost by necessity, was the the borough of Aladad and some of the major players and NPCs that were going to be in there before any other plots. And just thinking about their relationship to each other and how that can create plots and create like adventure hooks for the players. I'm really hoping to do, because a lot of the sci-fi stuff, Wretched New Flesh games I played, and Judd ran a few at VentureCon last year, which was awesome. There was always like this top-down, like you got the mega corporations, right? Doing, and that's pretty classic. But I rewatched Akira about a couple months ago, and I'm like, I think I'm going to do a game about bikers, like street level cyberpunk using Wretched New Flesh. I think that'd be freaking awesome. So that's right now my kind of inspiration for that. But I don't know where I was going with this. I'm sorry.
It happens to the best of us, Matt. It happens to the best of us. So I'm watching chat, and there seems to be a debate about magic and ritual magic and yada 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 yada. And what I would say is, give me a horror movie or something real suspenseful that takes place in modern times, and 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have instantaneous magic. In fact, a lot of times the crux of those movies is going to be the ritual itself. So I understand for you OSR guys that are thinking about, the fight and everything else. Sure, it seems weird, but if you're playing a different style of game, it makes complete sense for magic to not be instantaneous. And for it to be hard. And plus, even in other game worlds, like there's plenty of games that just don't have magic. Anyway, sorry. I just see the
No,
debate, and I think there's definitely the idea that it's just not right I think is kind of silly. So it fits that setting very well.
I agree with that too, and I know I keep bringing up Lamentations, comparing the Red Room's products with Lamentations, and I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. The reason why I like the Red Room and the reason why I like Lamentations is because they're not putting out the same old ho hum basic fantasy crap. I know how to make a Goblin Warren. You know what I mean? And I've done that for 30 years. Picking up again, like I would never play a game like this until I read this book, but anyway, bringing up Lamentations, like Lamentation is a classic OSR spellcaster, right? And I think that's actually one of the challenges because Lamentations wants to be horrific. He wants to scare you. He wants to scare you, the player, not you role playing being scared, but actually being terrified by what's happening at the table. And I think his spellcaster is sort of creates a challenge. I think he solved that challenge by making spellcasters scary. Like if they miscast a spell, your whole campaign could be just over, right? But he had to go in that direction, and I think the Red Room has gone in this other direction, and I think that it works. Like another setting I really like is Wretched Interbellum, between the first two world wars here. This is like pulp fantasy. This is Indiana Jones going into the Temple of Doom and hearing some dude. What is he chanting? I can't remember what it is. And then he like takes the guy's heart out. That's a ritual, and that's like awesome. And that is, like you were saying, Gary, the crux of the adventure.
Right.
Like, oh my God, he's taking hearts.
Yeah, and the other thing is that you don't find. I mean, this isn't. In the older movies, we're talking about 70s and 80s movies and everything else. One of the things, and this is a shift in entertainment, and I blame it on Star Wars. But it used to be those types of movies where a normal person or a normal person in a, like a fantasy or sci-fi world, and they were always getting swept up into bigger things, right? It was always the regular guy who finds himself in this situation or that situation. And that's kind of, I think that I'm still on this magic thing here because they won't stop. I think that's kind of what that's modeled after is the, this idea that it's bigger. It's more powerful. It's more scary. In D&D, when you're just, kind of going, 30 feet at a time and exploring the dungeon, sure, you need the magic missile. It's a different kind of game. And earlier somebody said, what is a game that isn't OSR style? What is that game you speak of? And I think what I'm saying is when you're not dungeon crawling, when you're not hex crawling, when there is a sort of story aspect to it, whether it's heavy role play or not, I would say instead of it being location based, maybe it's NPC based, or something like that. There's a difference. There's just a difference. You know it if you play it. So
I agree. Yeah. Magic. We've been talking a lot about magic. I will actually ask, on that note, actually, some of the modules you guys put out, you put a lot of NPC stuff in there, and you put in a lot of detail. Can you speak to that? Like, what's the motivation behind that?
Well, that's my style as a game master, so that's why I've did that as well for the games. I don't think people will pay that much attention to all the detail because it might be boring. Those are my NPCs, not yours, but it's an example. You can use it or not. You can use another one. But if you are going to take the time to read it, there are some ideas to be taken from there. Possible plot hooks for scenarios. If you introduce that character, it will be easier to create an interaction and then possibly some development from there and so that's why I put it in there, because that's my style of game mastering. And it might be useful for other people that do the same style of preparing stuff.
Well,
Absolutely.
I do like how, I mean, you had mentioned this. I can't remember where you did mention this. I mean, you already kind of talked about this, but you said it really succinctly on some live stream with someone a while back. But you said you don't like writing adventures, you like writing situations. I think is what you said. And I think that having those NPCs as part of that environment really allows for the
Yeah.
players to just kind of go in and experience whatever they're going to experience in that environment.
Yeah, when I'm game mastering, and when Jed is game mastering as well, it's the same. I'm not sure if he has the same style or if he's just adapting it when we are playing Wretched. But he's been a game master, not as much as I've been, but almost in our weekly sessions, and basically spend most of the time just interacting with NPCs. There's very few dice rolls in the end. Except lately, because we've been playing Savage Swords, and that Savage Swords requires a little bit more of combat, of course. But usually, when we are playing, let's say, New Flesh or Darker or Wretched Darkness or Epoch, it's mostly about interacting, investigating, coming up with a plan, discussing it, looking for clues, interviewing NPCs, and just chatting with them. So it's mostly we mostly talk.
That I found that in a lot of my modern day campaigns, it turned into a lot of role playing. And when the dice started rolling, it was still fun. It just wasn't as common. I think I get disappointed. In fact, we're playing a game right now, a different game that is sort of a modern-ish setting, a 1920 setting. And I feel bad when there's not an encounter some nights, when there's not a fight. I'm like, oh, sorry, guys. I promise I'll try to find a fight, for you guys to get into. But then that's kind of like forcing the situation as well, but I think it's old habits, you just kind of feel like that's part of it. And when you just let it go and you have those games, they're fine. And your players, I've gotten a lot of compliments from players on games that I thought, geez, what did we even do tonight?
I like those are the sessions I really like, and those are the ones I remember. We didn't do anything, but we were here 3 hours and stuff were happening. That's what when we were running Welcome to St. Cloud, which is the Twin Peaks like setting. It was just like that. We would spend some time, and usually it went completely off the hook. It was just something that wasn't even planned. There was no plot hook for that, but someone had an idea. Let's do this, and okay, that's fine. Let's do it, and it's fun. Not for everybody, but if you like that kind of thing, it can be really really fun.
Right. Do you find at the table most of your games stay sort of like in game, or is it sort of a local game where you're playing in a smaller setting, or do you find yourself planet hopping, or really your characters traveling from one place to another a lot?
It depends. When we are playing horror, usually it's local, but I would say that games like Interbellum and even Wretched Epoch, those are more hopping from country to country,
Right.
if needed, at least. Not always, but they are more conducive to that. And Wretched Space, in that case, it would be planet hopping, not
Truth.
city.
Truth. Yeah, I find a lot of those games. So many of my games wind up local, and right up until I give everybody a spaceship, and once you give your players a spaceship, like just forget about planning a game. Like it's over. See you later, guys. Where do you want to go?
That's why I prefer sci-fi horror. It's like you're trapped on the space station with a xenomorph. Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I prefer as well. that kind of thing in horror. In space, space horror is. I would say that Event Horizon is one of my favorite horror movies.
Me too. Me too. That's
That's
just brilliant.
that's
Brilliant film.
Hellraiser
See,
meets space, and that brilliant.
I'm that weirdo. I don't know what it is. I just don't like what do you call it? I don't like being scared. I don't know. Like everybody really enjoys it. And I don't, horror movies just really are kind of like, ugh.
I'm not scared anymore. I haven't been scared watching horror movies for a long time because I consume them a lot. But I still like horror movies, not for the scares, but that's hard to say. What do I like in horror movies?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I've grew up watching horror movies. I started very young watching horror, so
I
it's
think I had a
my
really
my
bad
favorite genre.
drive. Yeah. I think I had a really bad driving experience like when I was a kid in the 80s, and it just soured me on horror movies. There was this crazy, it was about this lady, and it was called The 13th Floor. And it was in this hospital, and this woman walked in. A woman walked into her room, and her friend was all hung up, and there was all the blood around the towel. And I freaked out. That was it.
See, I try to figure out like what is about horror that I like, and I think I'm kind of in with you, Miguel. Like I can't put my finger on it. I just know that if I've been watching a horror film or even read like when I was a kid and I was reading a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, like I'd find myself like tensing up while reading. And like if I'm watching a movie and I'm doing this for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and I'm just like tense, I'm like, yeah, this is a good film. Like, and I won't realize I'm doing it. And some of the best films, and Event Horizon was one that did this, is the movie's done. I usually watch late at night because I'm a masochist. Movie's done, house is quiet. I start turning off lights, and then the hairs in the back of my neck go up, and I'm like looking around like there's something the movie or the book has lingered with me long after I'm done. That I and sometimes it's like a slasher film, like Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween. I thought was really good. Sometimes it's psychological horror, and then sometimes it's like supernatural. I can't put my finger on it exactly which one I prefer. I just like them all. If it makes me like, I think for a while I was really into body horror too. And that's translated over into my Lamentations games where I go into detail about the sound of the meat.
It's so bad.
Yeah, I like all styles of horror. But new movies, I haven't watched any good horror movie lately. Only old movies.
I haven't
Yeah.
watched any good new movies at all lately,
Yeah,
to tell you the
that's
truth.
true.
That's
true.
No, me and Matt were talking about sci-fi one day in chat, and he was telling me all the sci-fi movies he loved, and I sent him a gif of Flash Gordon. I was like, bro, this is where I'm at. I like people with wings and rescuing hot girls and laser guns, and that's my space opera. Kind of like Star Wars is too tame. There's not enough.
Yeah, well, I'm not really. I wouldn't nowadays. I wouldn't run a Star Wars game.
It's like the easiest setting in the world, man.
Yeah,
It's so
that's the
easy.
advantage. Of course, everybody knows it. Everybody knows the setting.
Yeah,
But that's not.
it's
It wouldn't be my choice. I would pick something else. Not
yeah.
sure what. Oh, it could be Flash Gordon. Why not? Maybe.
It might be Flash Gordon. You never know. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to ask, we've been talking a lot about horror because there's something I've noticed, and anybody who's been reading Wretched has noticed. There's like this theme that goes from one setting book to the next, to the next, to the next, and that's the beyond.
Yeah.
This sort of like, and I don't think it was intentional initially, but I think it kind of became a thing. Is it fair to say there's a touch of horror in all of your settings?
Yeah. All of them.
And can you speak about the beyond a little bit? Like, what is it, and where did it come from?
Um, I think it was introduced. The concept, I think it was introduced for Wretched Epoch, and it wasn't even me. It was Joe, if you remember him. He did
Yep.
some stuff for us. Uh, so Joe starts writing, and then he spends all nights writing stuff, and then he would send me all that material. But so it's not very. He can't focus. He writes. A bit of a diary, and then he writes a table, and then he writes something. So it's all a whole lot of stuff to digest and come up with something. But so he came up with the idea of the Beyond. So it would be a way we could connect the several settings, and so basically it's our the source of all supernatural things, and it's strange concept. It's a place, but not a physical place. It can be anything. You can just throw in whatever you want in there, because it's a very weird place, oniric place where everything can happen. Usually bad things, of course. It's the source of magic. It's the source of all things supernatural in Wretched, and that's why all the games have a bit of horror in it, because there's always a connection to the beyond, and the beyond interferes in the worlds, and it brings in strange stuff, demons, magic, weird events, and then you can connect through the beyond. You can connect any setting, so you can pick your characters from space, and they go through a portal or something, and they end up in a fantasy setting if you want. So there's that connection, and because of that, we also thought, well, since we have this way of introducing things from one setting to the other, we started also using the same factions from game to game. So there's a few of those factions that are in all Wretched settings, or almost all of them.
Yeah, it kind of creates like this meta narrative
Yeah,
between the settings, and I think is really cool. And actually inspired my first failed attempt at something for your winter game jam. I was going to create like Julian Sands, may he rest in peace, was one of my first like horror movie I was a fan of his because he did the Warlock, and so I was making this like Warlock tower, but it existed in all places at once. So it was kind of like the Black Tower, or the Dark Tower. I mean, so it was kind of like that, but it was all. And I quickly realized this is really going to be more for like a larger thing. So I put it aside, but like it really does like kind of connect everything and allows you the game master to do just about whatever you want with the Wretched verse as it is. So yeah, I liked the Beyond. It's definitely a cool thing. Yeah, I don't know where else I was going with that one either.
it also makes it easy to come up with stuff on the spot. If you don't know what to do, just throw in some weird stuff, and it's the beyond.
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to. Gary and I were just kind of thinking like it's been an hour, and I know it's about 4 o'clock. I mean, if you wanted to call it a night, you could. If you want to keep going,
No,
we're happy to keep going.
I've slept a few hours before, so
Okay,
I'm
cool.
Oh,
I'm fine
nice.
with going.
Well, we just thought we might take mercy on you.
Yeah.
'Cause I know how that can be. So
You haven't mentioned yet your new edition for
Oh, I
for
did it.
Wretched Country.
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly in the beginning.
I haven't read it yet, but I
Yeah,
know that's the probably the next thing I'm going to do, the layout for that.
cool, very cool. Yeah, I read the first edition of Wretched Country, and I thought, oh, cool. And I was like on this country kick for some weird horror country kick for a while, a few years back, and I found some really great websites, like Native American cultural websites that had like all this history of Midwestern folklore. And what kind of stuck out to me is cannibalism was like this huge theme from one tribe to the next, and it got me thinking about how hard the winters must have been. And so if those who don't have like the first edition, this will also be in the second edition. In fact, the rules really didn't need to change. They just needed to be updated to meet the new lingo for Wretched. But yeah, you got rules for like trying to survive the weather out there. It's basically a monster manual with a few other rules in it for shamans, steampunk, mad scientists, kung fu, mainly because of Kwai Chang Kang from the old television show. Spiritualists. I did some research into spiritualism, so they're kind of like a psychic class. And the most interesting thing in my research of like the 1800s Wild West was people who moved out there, their writings would get more and more depressed and borderline schizophrenic. Like they'd lose their minds out in the prairie. And one of the things that they would constantly talk about is the ever-present sound, juxtaposition with like this ever-present silence. And some scientists theorized, come the turn of the century, when things start modernizing and cities are built, these people stopped writing like that. And they theorized that it was so quiet that the smallest sound would be amplified, and that was what was driving people crazy out in the prairie. So I incorporate prairie madness rules in Wretched. So Wretched folklore. So I hope people get it, and you can use it. You can use it in any OSR. I know Scrying Dutchman has got like some kind of bolt action, I think is what it's called. You can use it for that. But yeah, I had a lot of fun writing it, and I'm glad I finally got around to updating it.
I think for a country game to be more interesting, it has to have some weirdness in it. A Western game, not a country game. Just realistic stuff. It's probably going to get boring quickly. Shooting people and all that. It's not.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, like, how many train heists can you do?
Yeah.
Shootouts at the OK Corral can you do?
I have hundreds and hundreds of hours on Red Dead Redemption, doing nothing but train heists, fishing, and hunting. In fact, I get pissed off when I have to do a mission that takes me away from my fishing.
I never played Red Dead Redemption. I didn't have a PlayStation when they adapted it to PC. I wasn't playing that much at the time. So
the
never
Red Dead
played it.
Redemption.
I know that I
don't
really
do
know
it.
the game.
It'll steal your soul. It's
Yeah,
it's
I know
like
that,
making a Western movie.
I'm sure I would spend hundreds of hours playing it if I started. So
I put the big TV and the PlayStation in the older boys' room just to limit the amount of time I have access to it. Like I literally moved it into a teenager's room so that I couldn't play it anymore.
But it does look very good, the game. And
yeah,
so I've heard very good things about it.
How would you bring the Beyond into like a Western campaign? So you just, I love the prairie rules you're talking about. What kind of monsters, just out of curiosity? I know you have your book. Not everybody's read it. What kind of monsters are we talking about?
Oh, well, let's see.
And everybody should go pick up the new edition.
Yeah, it'll be out eventually. Well, one of them I really like is Deer Woman. And you'll like this one too, Gary, because she attacks your sex appeal.
Nice.
So she, I can't remember the tribe, but she appeared in a couple of them. Cherokee may have been one of them. But basically, women would do like these fertility rituals and hoping that Deer Woman would appear, and she could take the form of a very beautiful woman or a deer. And any man who looks eyes on her can fall into this very lascivious, sort of like funk or whatever, or frenzy. and they will follow her typically to their death. So it was she was used both for fertility, but also for revenge for men who were unfaithful. So if you're playing Wretched and you're playing a lustful character, that's your sin.
Right.
You'll have penalties to saving throw when you see her, for example. There's another one that I really liked was Aglabimu. He's like this giant frog demon that would create dams, according to folklore, would create dams
Right.
to dry up river, and the only way to get the rivers to flow again is to sacrifice to Aglabimu. So I took some liberties and I created like Aglabimu type zombie people who are not quite cultists. They were like sacrificed, and they sort of became under Aglabimu's thrall. So Aglabimu would be more like a boss. It could be more of like a boss fight
Right.
type, character. Obviously, you have Wendigo. That's a classic one. Another one was let me see. I'm trying to remember the name.
OSR Dwarf says Skinwalkers, Wendigo, White Buffalo Gods.
I have the Gook. They're like, in folklore they believe that there was like these insect men out there. So I have like this entire like hive thing you can do. Flying Head, that's actually comes from Iroquois, which is more New York State, but I like it so much I put it in here. But basically it's an undead head that is out for vengeance. Another one is called Dry Fingers, and that's also an undead thing. It's just a disembodied hand that can paralyze you and kill you. There's a lot of neat things. I think I also have the Thunderhawk. I think it's called. Hold on a second. I can't remember what I called it. Thunderbird. And this is if you remember those totems you'd see actually more in the Northwest. At the top was like the bird. That's the Thunderbird, and it's a cryptid, so it's like huge, and it's very powerful. If you're crazy enough to take it on and actually defeat it, you'll gain its power, but you'll piss off every single Native American tribe in the West, and you'll be hunted. So I had some fun putting this together.
Cyrus says Chupacabra. Bro, I've seen little kids cry talking about Chupacabra, but I live in Texas, and it's like the closer you get to the border, the more people believe in that. They're not fucking around about Chupacabra. It's a fact of life, man. I think everybody's seen it now. So
I think Wib Stopson's got a comment. Let's see. Maybe for old Western style, a more narrative style might have more options than just doing train heists over and over. Have some intrigue scenarios.
I think not any, but most John Carpenter's movies can be easily adapted into a weird Western. Actually, they are Westerns. Vampires is a Western.
Yeah.
Ghost of Mars is a weird Western, but it's not supposed to be, but it is a Western. There are several movies like those that can be used as inspiration.
Big Trouble in China, greatest movie ever filmed. Ever. Sorry, you said John Carpenter.
I think my favorite right now is They Live.
Ooh, that is, Roddy Piper.
Still for real, but it's my favorite.
No, that's
I think
actually
it was Prince of Darkness before, but now it's They Live.
I think They Live is waiting to be used as a role-playing game setting. I mean, it's just ripe. You would only have to do. There's only so much work you'd have to do, and even if people aren't familiar with it, the idea is fairly simple. I think that would be great. LA in the 80s or V. Didn't somebody do something like V?
Someone did. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can find
that. Who was that? Who did
that? It's for 350 over at the Red Room store. They Live and V were like the big influences for that one. I just thought it was fun. I had rewatched like the original V and then the reboot. And I'm like, man, this would be like so awesome for Wretched Agents of Wretch, which I the book's actually up on the shelf there. That's the spy thriller game that they
Mhm.
put together. I thought that would be cool. Like put it in the 60s or between the 60s and the 80s and just have fun with it. But yeah, I know OSR Dwarf. I'm actually shilling tonight. But
I've encouraged Matt to shill a little bit more. You know, he wants to sell things, but he don't want to talk about it. How you going to do that?
I don't.
You got to let people know. So speaking of that, Miguel, what's the policies for writing for Wretched or for Red? How does that work if somebody wants to create content for your games?
Uh, just go ahead. There's
Just
no.
go ahead.
Just go ahead. Just go ahead.
Best answer. Best answer.
If you want me, I mean, if you want me to publish it, we'd probably have to talk about it. But there's no issues with that. If you want to publish somewhere else, of course, no one is going to do that because you couldn't sell it at drive-through. If you mention the name Ratchet, it's probably
Yeah.
not going to be allowed. So
Well,
that's
I'm
the problem.
curious, and I've kind of been dodging it because I really just wanted to talk about games, but I think everybody here in chat, these are not
I think
newbies.
someone asked, how did that happen? How
Yeah,
were we banned? So I can
yeah.
tell the
So
story
you
once
guys,
more.
yeah. Sorry about that. You guys
No
are
problem.
pretty much banned from drive through.
Hmm.
And what did happen?
Okay, so the first thing that happened was a few people started reporting our titles for problematic content. Um, and I believe it was on purpose. It was most certainly people that have had arguments or something with us on social media because it was too fast. The title was just published, and right the next day or after a couple of days, someone was reporting it. It happened several times, and most of the times they just took it for a while, and there was no problem because they just reported it uh, for nothing, basically.
Right.
The one title that I took from drive through myself was Sexual Holocaust, because they wanted me to change stuff, and I said, nah, I'm not going to change anything. I'll just release it for free. So this happened several times. I'm not sure how many. The last time it happened was when we published Man. Man is that comedic game that we published, but we didn't write. The author is someone called Dick Pound, not his real name. uh, so and that one I know that one was actually and I don't like to use the word problematic, but it was. So not
Yeah.
for me, but I understand that
Well,
other people would find it
it pushed
problematic.
things for sure. Yeah.
And I'm sure that one wouldn't be allowed to be sold at drive-through after they did the revision of that. But it didn't happen because nothing happened after that, because when they removed men for what do they call it, reviewing or whatever, when their publisher relations person reads the content looking for things to be offended by, we did a video about that, and we complained about what was happening, and they checked our social media and they saw the video. So and this goes against the policy they had introduced, I think, after their issues with Venger. um, I can't remember the name of the scenario, that was something about abortion, I think.
Yeah.
um, so they introduced a policy that was called hostile marketing, that if you say negative things about drive-through, uh, they have a reason to at least to ban you, or maybe not to instantly ban you, but to say, well, supposedly they they are supposed to give you a warning. So in your if you do a first infraction, they should warn you. If you repeat it, they will ban you. They jumped ahead and they banned us instantly when we complained about it. So that was the story. Uh, was it political? Of course, but they had an excuse.
Yeah.
So this was it's not particularly interesting, but yeah, that's the story.
No, I hear you. Do you know? So the people that were making the complaints, were they made from like a sort of a political place, or was
I
it
don't know.
other?
They didn't. They didn't explain what was the complaint. They just said that it was reported, and they didn't explain exactly what was
Right.
the reason for the report.
Well, and
I
that's
believe that in sexual holocaust is because it's a violent, not sexual, in spite of the name. It's not really sexual, but it's violent. There are some descriptions of bodies and maimed bodies and stuff
yeah.
like that.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah. Well, I think because I don't want
Well, I was
to.
gonna
I don't want to
say,
get on a rant here, but the industry is pretty cutthroat at times. And just a year or so ago, there was that article that came out that had the recordings attached to it, where certain names in the industry admitted to like targeting James Raggi, Grim Jim, Pundit, all these guys because they didn't like. I mean, they claimed publicly politics. It's like, oh, well, they're problematic. They say all these things and this, that, and everything. But the recordings proved it had nothing to do with politics. It had everything to do with the fact that they were competitors and they were good at what they were doing. And so rather than try to put out a better product, they try to take them out at the knees, Nancy Kerrigan style, and it's sad because I don't think it's happening as much, but I think it still does happen.
well, that's what I was gonna say. Is just the other day somebody posted on your server. Maybe it was you that put it up, but it was that game on drive-through that was just ridiculous, over the top. What was that? Was that on your server or was that on the Red Room server? It was just a drive-through, and I can't
Yeah, I
remember
think
what the
I
game.
know what you're mentioning, but I have
Mhm.
a terrible memory.
But it's not that I think
Oh,
that game.
was that the one that had dragon on the cover,
It
where
might
you
have
play
been.
people
Oh
that are
yeah,
going to
It
kill bad guys from the past?
Yeah, and it's just one of these things where you can find any number of examples of things that somebody is going to find offensive. And I think the big thing that sucks is there's just really no competition for drive-through.
No, no.
I
yeah,
mean, you're always going to have the bigger companies kind of interfering with content, and I can almost if all I'm thinking about money, if all I'm thinking about is money during that time period, I understand they had a choice to make, but they are the only game in town, so it is pretty much just flat out censorship, Um, and a lot of those games, I don't want to be like, those are great games. I don't know a lot of those games, and I probably wouldn't pick up a lot of those
yeah.
games just looking
Well,
at them. But I don't think they
it,
should be banned. That's
yeah.
essentially what's happened. So
Well, that's the thing too, because I remember when all this went down. And Miguel, I'm just this is not directed at you at all, but I had just published this, and like in 2 weeks, I was so close to Copper Cellar, but it got taken down, and I just was sitting back thinking, Vendor had to go through it. James Raggi goes through it every year when he's got a new release, it's like, but then you find some of these other products that are just as offensive, but just from another political position or another perspective. And I'm like, why, if there's a paywall, like, oh, this is for like adult content or whatever, like,
Mhm.
why what is going on here? And I just go back to, at the time I was like, this doesn't make any sense other than, politics. Are people really that nasty? Yeah, I guess. But then you
Yeah,
hear, like I said, when that article came out, all of a sudden I was just like,
if they
black.
allow that game where you are going to play, but it's not a game yet. It's just a preview of the game. But it's called Retro Kill. Now I remember the name.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you play a team of operatives that is traveling to the past to murder dictators or elected U.S. presidents like Ronald Reagan and some other people. Those are the examples, of course. That they have.
Yeah.
I don't
And we
remember the
all
other.
know if there were any other presidents, I could name some, but I don't want to be. I'm not I fucking hate politics and I hate politicians, but I don't like what's going on. You know what I mean? Because essentially, I think everybody's just be free to do whatever the fuck they want. But we all know it's the truth. If it was Obama, Biden, Clinton, I don't know. They kind of threw Clinton under the bus recently, I feel like. But if it was any of the more recent Democratic presidents, it would be hate speech, man.
Yeah.
It would be high crimes.
They mentioned several examples in that preview, and they were all supposedly right-wing people. Mao Zedong is not there. Lenin, Stalin, Castro, none of those guys are there. So that's a leftist propaganda game.
Right.
There's just one thing that maybe Drive-Thru didn't allow to be published. A crazy thing that I know of. It was a cult scenario. Cult is a horror game. A cult scenario for the new edition, where you played interns in Trump's campaign. Not this one, the previous one. And I think so. Trump and Mike Pence were creatures, supernatural creatures. I can't remember which kind of supernatural creatures. That one is not on Drive-Thru. I've checked it, so they were maybe afraid there'd be some
That's
problems.
crazy. That's so crazy. Like, I'm going back. Let's bring this back to game design. How is that fun? Like, how is that fun? Hey, we're gonna live out this weird fantasy that we got. Like, versus
just mention another one, Sigmata. This sign kills fascists. That must be.
I do think you say, "How is this fun?" It could be. I don't know. Inglourious Bastards is a fun movie, right?
I didn't like that movie. Actually.
Which one?
You don't like that Inglourious
the original
Bastards?
Or I don't like Tarantino's movie, but the original movie.
You don't like you don't.
The original movie is pretty good.
Do you just not like Tarantino, or do you not like that movie?
I've stopped liking Tarantino after Kill Bill. Yeah, after the second part of Kill Bill.
Really?
I like the first one, but I didn't like the second part.
I stopped liking him because of Kill Bill. I'm like, I don't like this. This is just not for me. I thought some of the stuff before obviously was good, but
he's overrated.
I agree.
First movies are pretty good. I quite like Reservoir Dogs. That's an amazing movie.
That was a great movie. Pulp Fiction.
As well.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction has too many stars in it, but
yeah,
I think that
Gary's about to leave the chat.
I don't the words that are, I mean, I understand the words that y'all are saying. I get it. I know that they're English and I have, you know what I mean? The sentences seem to make sense, but nothing is really making sense right now.
His recent movie, I like the what's it called? The most recent one, Hollywood something.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, that was bad.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't think he's like the greatest filmmaker ever, but I think of our generation, you know, I really think most of his movies, I haven't seen a movie I don't like, and I think a lot of
our generation, maybe. I don't. I'm not sure about that. I can't remember many Gen X directors. I'm assuming he's a Gen X.
I guess so. Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, I would put
probably.
I think
he was entertaining Gen Xers, right?
Yeah.
That's who his audience was for sure. So
then there are those movies that he did before. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and after Kill Bill, they basically are westerns, and the original ones are better. Sergio
I,
Leone can't be beaten, so why
I'll
bother?
give you that one, and
It
I
was
will say
made.
that I don't enjoy. I loved Kill Bills, both of the Kill Bill movies, and I really enjoyed watching Inglorious Bastards. I thought that was pretty fun. But Hateful Eight, you know, I still don't think I've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I will, and I'll probably like it. I don't know. That's crazy. You
I
guys,
like that one, especially the part when they start killing the hippies. It was pretty fun.
yeah, yeah. Well, and Tarantino he was one of those guys that kind of got grandfathered in. I mean, if you really think about it, he should have been canceled like first thing. As soon as cancellations started happening, they should have come after him. But he was just kind of like Bill Burr. He's just like, I just don't give a fuck. You know, be mad. Go be mad. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter. So I
Well,
like
he was
that.
well, I was just gonna say he was also making people a lot of money too. So
I think
He's
they tried
making
some time ago. They started trying to find some problematic things. I
yeah,
don't
but
know.
he still
Probably.
doesn't care. Like he just I really think a lot of that, you know, in your case it's different because you know your business was completely undercut. But I think there are some people who are just able to move through the world and just feel like, all
Yeah,
right,
they can
great.
do
You know, you
whatever
hate
they want.
me, go for it, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, he was
yeah.
one of
If you
those.
have a platform,
Yeah.
you're
I'm,
only cancelled if you want.
which is funny because when I first read Wretched, like I started thinking of all those old 70s movies. And then I thought of Tarantino. And in fact, the first ideas I had for games for Wretched, I don't think they even had magic. You know, I felt like it was such a great system for doing gangsters and gangsters.
Well, we haven't published the gangster game yet, but it's planned. There will be a gangster game, and it will obviously have some inspiration in Tarantino's movies. Uh, as I was, well, I was going to say, I was a big fan of Tarantino, but I have a I had an issue with Kill Bill. It was one of my favorite directors until
What
he did Kill Bill.
can you tell me what your issue with? I know this isn't about
I
games.
don't
Can you
know.
please tell me what your issue with Kill Bill
I
is?
don't know. I was not the first part, volume two. I don't know. I hated it, and I just came out of a movie and thinking, "Fuck, I can't. I really
Dude, I
can't."
don't remember when that movie came out, but I think I was 30 already. And when I came out of that movie, I was karate chopping. Okay, come on, motherfucker.
Well, maybe maybe that's the problem. I'm not. I was never a big fan of Hong Kong stuff, so
Oh,
that's
yeah,
probably part of it.
it might be because we had, I know here in the States, there was the USA Network, and they had this show called Kung Fu Theater. And it was all these old like
I remember
60s and
that.
70s dubbed like chop suey flicks, chop sake. And it was, and none of them were good,
Yeah.
but you just watched it, you know, the whole time. It looked so cool. Horrible movies, great look. So anyway, what's down the road? Are there any projects that maybe you haven't started working yet that you're excited about? What are your like
We
where
had
are your thoughts with
we had
Wretched right
a
now?
bunch
Or Red?
of stuff planned, but I'm putting those on hold probably because sales have been plummeting, and so I am not going to start releasing stuff right now if it's not selling. I don't think it's a good idea. I was thinking perhaps a thing that we could do next. Um, well, except re-releasing Wretched Folklore and also doing an expanded version of Darker, but then put the other projects on hold. And I was thinking about doing a simplified version of the red rules, and then using that because the ultra American doesn't like complex rules, and so I'm doing this just for him. I'm joking, of course. And then picking up some of our settings, of our Wretched settings, and use them also in a summarized version to do a new game. but with red rules. This simplified, so a micro version of red, and also a micro version of the setting. So, like, could be Epoch or I don't know, some of the others. And then do shorter releases, just smaller games, and see how that goes. If it sells better than the other things, I'll probably do several of those. If not, I'll have to think about one of those projects. One of those was um, that gangster game I was thinking about. An offer you can't refuse. It already had a name and a cover,
Nice.
but
Cool.
Rob did the cover.
See, I've always thought somebody should put together a gangster game that's kind of like domain play, where you have like neighborhoods and turf. Anyway,
There was a very large gangster game. I think it was free on drive-thru. What was the name? Dogtown, I believe it's. I don't
Dogtown.
know if it has domain rules, but it's a big game. There's plenty of rules in there.
Right. Well, I think it's an area worth looking at for folks.
Yeah, I don't think there's too many games out there that really have touched upon it. It's like one of those genres, kind of like country western games that are. I mean, they exist, but it's just such a niche kind of area. That would be kind of cool to see something wretched about it, I guess, or
Well, it's
red.
also, yeah, one of the things I think about when planning a game like that is, especially at lower levels, it would, since you're already a member of a gang or an organization, those games are kind of really easy to plan for because you just give missions. It's like running a military kind of game. It's just like, go do this, go do that, up until about mid-level, and then right about then your players start fucking up and skimming off the top. It's the third act of Goodfellas, and everything goes bad.
Yeah, I think I've actually never played a gangster campaign. We've played one shots maybe, but never.
Neither have
gangster.
I. I just imagine that's how it would go.
I think it could work. You just have to watch a lot of Scorsese movies or The Sopranos. And just it's already made.
I saw a thing. I keep going off in these digressions. I'm sorry. I saw a thing the other day about Sopranos where the creator said, I thought it was going to be a comedy. And he said, go back and watch the pilot again. So I did. I went back and watched the first episode as if it were a comedy. It was almost a comedy, guys. It's a very fun first episode.
There are some fun moments there.
Yeah.
Especially the part when he's talking to the psychiatrist.
Or when he's beating they see the guy that owes the money and they're beating him up in front of his job, and he looks at Christopher. He's like, "You're supposed to be doing this. Come on." So that'd make for some fun games. Oh, and your gaming group, is your gaming group predominantly male, or do you have a mix of male and females at the table?
Right now, the only female is Sylvia.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a time when we were playing with three women. Women, I think, at least the ones I've played with, were better for horror games, or better at horror games, or preferred horror games, and than guys.
Yeah.
And it's easier to introduce new people that never played role playing games through horror, because it's modern horror, not any kind of horror, but modern horror is very easy to introduce new people. Two of those who were playing with us were not really role players. They were invited, and they slip right into this easily.
I was just kind of curious because I don't know, like when my girl, I tell her about a dungeon crawl, she's just like, oh, she could care less. But when I'm in a game that has story and characters and things like that, there seems to be a little bit more interest. And not to like pigeonhole people or anything like that. It just, there seems to be differences in what people prefer. So,
I'm sure about that. I mean, there are nerd women that certainly will like to play.
Absolutely.
dungeons and all that stuff. But if you are going to introduce someone who isn't really a role player, dungeons is not probably
No,
not a good thing.
no, I think modern or horror or almost anything you can create with Red or with Wretched, and that's how I saw your game from the get go. I saw it as this big thing of clay where I was going to start chopping pieces off to kind of, you gave so much for people to work with in Wretched. It
Yeah.
was just like, all right, we're going to start. This is a sculpture. I have all the material I could possibly need. We're just going to start chiseling the parts off and find out, what I mean, what I can make underneath this. And I just love that. I'm a really big fan of Wretched, and I know you're on Red, and you're doing a new thing for Red. And I'm sorry, but I am kind of a fanboy for Wretched. I think the sins and virtues as opposed to alignment. I mean, alignment in a modern day setting seems a little funny anyway.
Yeah.
I think the sins and virtues made just perfect sense. And then there was the sex appeal stat, which if you're going for like a spaghetti western 70s, boobies and guns kind of movie, you gotta have that, and everybody always screams, charisma's not physical attractiveness.
Yeah.
And you
Was
was
it,
like, well, fuck it, this is it.
Was it there was that modern western B movie came out a few years back, Nude Nuns with Guns, I think it was called.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't watched that.
I fucking loved it.
I like the name.
Yeah. and it's very much on the nose.
Yeah. OSR Dwarf says alignment just means what side you are on. It does, but if you're playing a game when you're dealing with ambiguities and nobody's really a good guy, when you're doing something noir or something, a little modern and darker, I think I do think alignment, because it's not just in a fantasy game, you have an army of good, an army of bad. What side would you be on? In a modern game, I do think it's a bit more nuanced. And if your character isn't flawed, I think it kind of hinders the game somewhat. You got to have your demons and your better angels. The best action movies, the best, all of those movies are about flawed people who kind of have to do a little bit of fixing themselves before they overcome the challenge. Right.
Yeah.
And I just think the sins and virtues it works really well. And it works really well if you have players that will dive into the sin part of it. Like your game will become a lot more interesting if they make problems for you.
Yeah, I think alignment works better for classic fantasy, because classic fantasy is more based on tropes from pulp fiction and all that, whereas your modern game, to be immersive, I think needs to be a little bit more realistic. And we don't go around thinking, we may think someone's kind of chaotic, the guy's a little crazy, the guy, whatever, but we don't really think in those terms. We do have, sins and virtues. I think, as Gary was saying, it makes a lot more sense. And modern games really don't rely on tropes as much as they do skills, because we're way more complex than these tropes. Like, I'm the fighter, I'm this, I'm that. So I think that's like a key distinction, which Wretched gets. That's why I used to say is, it's a skills game masquerading as a class game, because it really just came down to the skills that we were using. So, which is another reason why I like Red, because Red is, like, to me, it's a little bit more elegant version of Wretched.
I hope so.
Well, one thing I did. Well, I'm not going to start. I didn't publish anything. I'm not going to start talking about what I did in my game. But Wretched, you can pretty much pull off. Think of your TV show. Think of a movie. I am actually, Miguel, that makes me curious. We had talked about planning a little earlier. And I think I planned my narrative style games completely wrong. I
don't know. Is there a wrong for that?
Well, there might be.
Might be wrong for someone else, but
no, that's true. That's true. I really, there's a group of players who want the big story, and they want to really immerse themselves in character. And there's a group of people that want to move their characters as a playing piece on a map and
Mhm.
chop things up.
Yep.
And just as different as those players can be, I think running. I mean, they're both role playing games, but that's kind of like saying Candyland and Risk are both board games. You know, they're both board games, but they're not.
Yeah.
They
It
have
feels
dice.
different.
Yeah,
It feels
it's a different feel. So
even in the computer role playing games, you have those that look like a shooter, and those that you are playing the characters in a isometric, like
absolutely, yes.
original Fallout and Fallout New Vegas, for example. It's completely different. Even in computer games, it gets different kinds of things. And in this case, yeah, it's the same. If you are trying to do something immersive and it's all about just role playing, you can't have pieces on a board, or you can have it, but it's
It,
irrelevant.
yeah,
You
I
don't
agree.
need it.
Yeah.
And if you want to do combat, well, the role playing and immersion part is irrelevant. You don't need it. So you either choose one or the other. I can't. I never liked the dungeon crawling stuff, so I cannot play that. I cannot game master it. I could play it as a player, but I could not game master it. Um, but there are people who have fun doing that. I would say that most people playing role playing games have fun doing that rather than the other option. So, but go ahead. I believe if maybe you can even use Wretched for that. It wasn't meant for that. It can be used for that again. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Probably not. But
challenge accepted. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I think that would be underutilizing your game. I think it's it's funny how all these games are very. A lot of times the math is very similar. If you've played this game, you can play that game, and it's those little changes, that make the game unique. Um, and that first Wretched book is just packed full of those little changes. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
there's lots
It
of options,
really is.
especially in the
I,
expanded version. There's
which is
too
yeah,
much, too
yeah.
much
Well,
rules.
you say that, and I'm still of the opinion. I am still of the opinion that one thing about it, D20 games is a lot of times these things are modular. You don't have to use every single
Hmm.
thing, and
Yeah,
that's why I was saying earlier, especially with Wretched Expanded, I got a hold of that and felt like there was. I forget. Maybe I was talking to Matt, but a lot of times I talk about like TV seasons and episodes, and that's how you kind of plan out these types of games, or at least that's how I do. And I was saying, there's nothing that I've watched on a screen that I couldn't do with this game except maybe superheroes. I don't
yeah.
think I could do a big Marvel thing, but there's other
No,
games for that. There's other
yeah.
systems for that.
We did the vigilantes, but that's not
Yeah, it's not the
street
same thing.
level. Street
It,
level
it's
superheroes. Not. No,
which is
it's impossible. It's impossible to do superheroes with this one. Yeah,
I think that I think D20 in general breaks down. I think
yeah.
that's why
The hard part.
I think some of the better simpler games are fantasy just because of scale. Scale is a
Mhm.
thing that when you try to deal with it, is it taking you out of the rules? Is it not? Does it still feel like it's just a whole mess? But for these smaller games, these more personal games like what you've put out, I think it is perfect. It works really well. So if somebody was looking to join uh, a red campaign or a wretched campaign, would Matt's server is open? Do you have games that run on your server? I know your time
Uh,
difference is pretty wild, but
yeah, no, and because of that, I don't even try to do that because it would be difficult. The people that are on the server and that they want to play, they are the ones. Well, that they can play, they are the ones in our group. So there's Judd and there's well, they are all in
so
the
what you're
server.
saying is Judd is going to run our game when we want to play a
Now,
game.
if you want to find some players, maybe you can look for them in the server because some of them will not play with us because of the time difference. But there may be someone there that is in the US, and they can maybe run or play in it. Because I think all of them have Wretched. I guess they are there, so I'm assuming that everybody there is at least as the core book.
Oh yeah, I think Matt's server is pretty aware of who Wretched is. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people are aware of Wretched. I've heard it talked about here and there. I mean, maybe it was when the whole that whole controversy was going down, but I think I heard even not too long ago, I forget the podcast, but out of nowhere, someone was like, "Yeah, we like Red Room." It's not like you guys are anonymous. You know what I mean? I just think it's hard for people who typically go to one place to look for games for whatever reason. They just don't use the search engine to
Mhm.
look up the companies.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a big
It
problem.
is a problem. It takes a whole 5 seconds.
Yeah, and
And I,
Lulu sells role playing games, but people don't go there looking for role playing games. I think they
no,
just
Yeah.
they know what they want, and then they go to Lulu and they pick the stuff, and also because their search function is awful, so
Yeah.
I've never gotten
it doesn't work. Doesn't
Lulu
work.
book
It's
ever.
not
Yeah,
good.
I like I think Lulu's print quality tends
Oh
to be
yeah,
a little
much better.
better than drive through, but
Much
yes,
better.
searching can be difficult.
Yeah,
I'll take a
wasn't
moment
made
here though
for
to
it.
remind I got the Red Room's email, or not email, excuse me, web address is in the description down below. Click on it, go there, check out some stuff. And yeah, if you want some physical copies of whatever they got, go to Lulu. It's totally worth the money. Like this Wretched
Jim
New
agrees
Flesh
with
is
you,
like one.
Miguel.
This is just a great book. This is Wretched New Flesh.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then Wretched Interbellum, like just really good quality, really good quality. And real quick about using dungeon crawls. All right, so I had this idea.
Here we
Not
go.
anytime soon. Not anytime soon. But I was thinking about doing the mashing Lamentations and Twilight and Empires, but use Wretched as sort of the game engine. So like do like Tower of the Stargazer, classic Regi, some of the other modules. I think it would be kind of fun just because it's war-torn Europe, and it's Wretched and it's Lamentation. It'll be a great matchup. It's like match made in heaven. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, Twilight of Empires is almost the timeline that they usually use in. It's a little bit before.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. But it's got a
Well,
lot more stuff in there though.
17th
Like I really
century.
love the miracle rules. I think are great, and the alchemy, like just pages and pages and pages of like alchemical stuff you can do, which I think is great.
Well, real quick, we've only got a couple minutes left. So, Miguel, is there anything that you want to plug? Any last anything at all?
I say that probably Savage Swords is the thing to talk about because it's going to be our next release next week, most likely, unless something catastrophic happens. But usually we usually just release the PDF first, so it's easier.
All right.
The print version will come later, so we'll start by that one. And as I mentioned before, people who purchased Wretched Bastards second edition will have a 50% discount. I will email the buyers at our store. If you didn't buy it at our store, you'll have to contact us. But if you purchase it at the Red Room store, I will send you an email.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Matt.
Well, I think you should buy a lot of Red Room stuff, including my stuff that's over there.
Go
I
buy
have
Matt's shit right
I
now.
know.
Get on there.
This was like one of my favorite settings, the Wretched Interbellum, and I wrote a little, I think it's like 70-page PDF. I was going to put it in a physical copy, but I decided to hold off because that's part one of a trilogy I'm working on. So part one takes place in the mid-20s, part two will be in the mid-30s, and part four will be in the mid 40s. But Isle of the Sapphire God, it's a little island hex crawl of sorts. But yeah, I can't say enough about the setting books. And yeah, again, even if you're not like a fanboy of Wretched like Gary is, the setting books are just so good. Like I just pick those up for your games. You will not be disappointed. So the link is to the Red Room stores will be in the description. And if you like what you see, go to Lulu and pick up a physical copy.
Yeah. And finally, before we head out, man, Miguel, I can't thank you enough. I know it's really late there. I know that you had to
Almost 5 o'clock now.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And you really need to get to bed. And we really appreciate this. Both of us are big fans of your work. We wish you all the luck and success that you could possibly have. And we will, whenever it comes up, I'm looking for a game that does this. I think both of us, mention Red or Wretched consistently. So anybody out there that hasn't read it, head over. The link is in the show description. Head over there. Look up Red. Look up the Wretched. Is it expanded or I think it's for expanded?
There's an expanded and a revised. The revised is free in PDF. Expanded.
Yeah, you can get revised for free. Anyway, it's just great. Go check it out. And for those of you would-be creators, you heard it here first. I said, Miguel, what is your policy for creating? And he said, create, do it, just put it out there. And that's great. If you want to get on drive-through, you might, come tell us what the game is for. Maybe don't tell us. Yeah, but we're all here at Second Watch. We're rooting for you. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks. I guess we still technically have like 3 minutes. But I don't know. I ran out of shit to say. Are you good?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It has been a pleasure being here, and in spite of the late hour. But as I said, I've slept a few hours before I came here. So, and
we appreciate it very much.
I'm going back to sleep again.
You've earned it, and we really appreciate it, man.
Sure. All right. We really do appreciate it. And good luck on Savage Swords and all of your upcoming everything. We really do. We're rooting for you.
All right. Well, with that said, guys, our watch has ended. I will now go to the outro. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.